Lighting for self-tapes. Dread it, avoid it, intimidate, confused? Well, I'm going to make a bold claim that you're going to feel like you've mastered lighting in only 60 seconds with 5 key concepts, so you're never confused about lighting again. Then we'll talk equipment and we'll create one lighting setup that works for most auditions and solves some of the common lighting problems. Hi, I'm Scott. You're watching Inside Musicals, the channel for all things musical theatre. Now, if you're an actor doing self-tapes, you might ask, why would I bother with lighting? It's one more step and it's just an audition. But when you really want that job, it's never just an audition. And if you really want to stand out, lighting is one way to do it. So here's my pitch. The heart of cinema is the art of shaping light for texture, depth, mood, and character. It all supports your performance. So if you're a casting agent, are you more receptive to some shabby home video or a cinematic masterpiece? Well, I can't guarantee a cinematic masterpiece, that's up to you. But I can guarantee that this kind of attention to detail says that you care about the work. It grabs their attention, and it's one step closer to them visualising you on stage or screen. So that's my pitch for why. But where do we start? Well, in part 1, we chose our location and we create an overarching goal of setting this thing up once so we barely have to think about it again. So our first task is to forget about using natural light. Not because it's bad, I mean it's brilliant, but it's too variable for setting up once. Now, in this room, for instance, I have floor-to-ceiling windows this side, waist-to-ceiling windows that side, so I could use natural light. But it's not on the angles that I want. It all looks a bit flat and uninteresting because there's no real point of focus. And then what do I do at night? Because every time the light changes, I'm changing settings on the camera. But with lights, I shoot day or night. It always looks consistent, and I never have to change settings unless I want to change the setup. More importantly, it puts me and my performance back in the spotlight. So let's break down this lighting setup into those 5 universal elements so you understand the function of light so you can make it work for you. Start the clock. First up, the key light. If there's only one light in a darkened room doing the heavy lifting to illuminate the subject, that's the key light. In this instance, it's in front, slightly to one side. An edge light, hair light, rim light create an outline to separate the subject from the background. A fill light lifts the shadows if the contrast's too moody. In the background, I illuminate objects to create interest, texture, and depth, but without illuminating the whole space, which would flatten it all out. Then finally, the catch light. That's the glint, that little reflection in the eye that gives sparkle and life to the face. Because without it, our eyes can look like cold, dead pools. Just trust me on that. Was that 60 seconds? Did we win? I guess we'll know in post. Now, there's only one way to light a scene, and we will break it down even further. But the best thing you can do is watch some of your favourite dramas. Notice how they use these same 5 elements to create endless looks. And as you gain confidence, you can kind of steal some of those elements for that kind of audition. Okay, I hear you say, 5 elements are well and good, but can't I just sit under the downlight in my living room? You could use it as a hair light, but usually it's either too high or too far away to meet effective key light. You know, lighting is a language, and we want to err on the side of cinema. But what exactly is cinematic lighting? Well, for our purposes, let's say it's all about the face. Your typical vlog, for instance, shot through a ring light, tends to make you look startled, like you're caught in the headlights. It flattens the features, and that's because the key light is on exactly the same plane as the camera. And it gives you alien-looking pupils. Great if you're auditioning for an alien, not so much for anything else. TV news and talk shows are an improvement because that key light is at a higher angle, but faces are still typically front-lit, which washes them out, so there's not a lot of dimension. But cinema loves to light faces from the side or even behind to carve more dimensionality from the image. But being an audition, we want to see the face. So we're going to go for a Rembrandt style of lighting, which is what this is. And it's where the light falls across the face, just catching the eye and upper cheek on the other side. So it shapes the face. There's a bit of shadow, a bit of drama, but you're still recognisable. Now, we'll set it all up step by step, but first let's talk equipment. It's not as daunting or costly as you think. There's a lot going on in this setup, but it only uses 2 professional video lights, one for the key and one for the edge. The rest is all domestic, so it can be done with a combination of both. But I use the pro lights first for the power, but also for the ease of use. It takes the friction out of the workflow when I'm not wrangling some makeshift rig. But you could get started with a desk lamp, a swing arm lamp, a clip-on lamp, anything with a movable head so you can direct the light where you want. And you'll need the brightest globe you can get. By comparison, this is 10 watts. This is 150 and it's dimmable. And so that control helps me balance it against the level of the other lights. For a video light, anything under 20 watts is really a waste of money. 60 to 100 is probably a sweet spot for this kind of work. So yes, this is overkill for video, but I also use it for stills instead of a flash. Stop judging. We also want color accuracy, which is good for skin tones, and a specified color temperature to set the white balance in our camera. If they don't publish specs, don't buy it. There's so many great options out there, from cubes, tubes, panels, cobs, ring lights, which can all sound really confusing, but the form factor really comes down to whatever's convenient and whatever's affordable. We want 2 mounting points, one for a stand to set it at the height and angle that we want, and one to attach modifiers to shape and direct the light. And we'll come back to modifiers. But check the mounting system before you buy. Most of mine are Bowen's mount, which is pretty universal. But if it's a proprietary mount, you might be limited to whatever that manufacturer offers. One nice to have feature though is fanless or silent. The first light I ever bought was a cheap eBay knockoff, and it worked pretty well, but it was noisy. By the time I added a second one, the audio was almost unusable. And how are we going to position this thing? We need a stand. I mean, you could use a box on books on bricks on a bench, but buy a lighting stand. They're pretty cheap. Oh, but the cheap ones are fine. I use them all the time. They can get top heavy, so you need to sandbag them. If you're going to use large modifiers, they'll be front heavy, so you might want to upgrade to a C stand. Bigger, stronger, a little more expensive, but I've never had one fall over. Okay, modifiers. 2 main flavors. The ones that condense or narrow the beam for hard-edged shadow, say a hood, Fresnel, snoot, optical snoot, or then those that spread or soften the light by virtue of their size, like an umbrella, softbox, or a beauty dish. As a first purchase, I'd go for a medium-sized circular softbox, just for the versatility. And don't be fooled by that little light that comes with a little diffusion cloth. It's never going to give you a soft light, because it's not the diffusion cloth per se that makes the light soft. It's the size of that diffusion. So the larger the light source relative to the subject, the softer the light because it's hitting from multiple angles, feathering the edge of the shadows. Whereas that same light at a distance, or that small light up close, being more directional, gives a crisp edge to the shadow for a hard light. Now, if you don't have a softbox, you can shine the light through some sheer fabric, a shower curtain, tracing paper, or you can even bounce it off some white cardboard. In our setup, we're also going to use a reflector. Now, you could make one out of some cardboard and tinfoil, but why would you when they're so cheap? Just be sure to buy it with a stand, because otherwise they're a bugger to get in the right position. Reminds me of an old boyfriend. And finally, pegs, clips, tape are all going to be super useful as a coloured lighting gels if you want to go down that path. And once you start plugging things in, you're going to need more than that wall socket. So I have 2 words for you. Power board. Extension cords. Don't overthink it. You'll thank me later. Now, when we set up lights, we typically encounter 2 problems, the placement of the light and the relative balance between them. So we're going to create a setup that solves both of those problems. So let's start with a darkened room. It doesn't have to be completely black, just dark enough that that ambient light or the changes in that light doesn't impact the exposure on our camera. Again, we're setting up once, so we barely have to think about it again. And keep in mind, the more powerful our light source, the easier it is to outcompete that ambient light. Now we want to set up our key light and get it right to build everything else around it. I'm using a large parabolic dome as a soft light, but use your equivalent. The process is the same. And since we're going for this Rembrandt style of lighting, which is always relative to the face, not relative to the camera, as an actor, now you need to decide where you're going to direct your performance. Direct to camera can look like a Zoom meeting or a reality TV confessional. So slightly off will work for most auditions. If you want a bit more drama, you can take a more extreme angle. Just give yourself a reason to turn every now and then so they can see your face. It is an audition. Now for this look, the light should be set up slightly in front, to the side, at or slightly above eye level and directed at the face. And remember, the light and stand should always be out of frame, so keep checking your camera. Once you're in position, use a hand mirror to see where the light is landing. We want a bit of shadow, say, in the crease of the eye to shape the eye. But if the light's too high, you'll start to create eye bags. If it's too low, being uplit, it starts to look sinister. And we can see up the nose. And no one needs to see up the nose. Now, a sneaky hack to check that the light's in the right place is to look at the catch light, which should be at about 2 o'clock or 10 o'clock on the iris. Before we set up any other lights, we want to check the background. If there's too much light spilling, we can either bring the whole setup further forward or simply angle the light further downward or sideways to minimize the spill, but still catch the face. Now we add an edge light. For this setup, I'm going to use a clip-on lamp. And rather than a hair light, which comes from above, we're going to set it up at about head height, so it just skims the edge of the jaw and outlines the head and the shoulder. Now, I like to place it 180 degrees to the key light, so there's a bit of shadow in between, but also whichever way I turn, the face is never in complete darkness. Now, this is not a rule, but I like these two lights to contrast, because if they're too evenly matched, they compete for attention. So if I'm emulating sun streaming in behind me, I'll make the key light brighter than the key. But mostly I want it to be more subtle, because I want this to stay the main focus. And if this is a neutral white, I might make that cooler or warmer. Okay, onto our fill light. And all we're doing is lifting the shadows, so it should be even more subtle than the edge light. And this is where our reflector comes in. And what I love about the reflector is it's like having another light, but you don't have to plug it in. And because it's reflecting the key light, once it's in position, it always reflects the same proportion of light, no matter what changes I make here. So for a dumb piece of equipment, it's kind of smart. Now, they come in multiple sizes, but because I mainly film up close, I've only ever used the small one, at about 30 centimeters. So if that little tip saves you some money or space, you're welcome. Now we're going to place it in front of us, opposite the key light. I tend to put it below eye level to lift the shadows from a different angle. But there's no reason why you can't put it higher if that works for you. And you know you've got it angled right when you're in position and you can see it reflected at its brightest. Okay, now with these two in place, we should have at least one catch light, but always do a test recording in camera to make sure it reads from that angle. If not, move one of the lights or move yourself. Now here's a tip a lot of people miss, and this really impacts your performance. Modern cameras have great low light ability, but in low light, our pupils dilate, which makes us look spaced out and kind of absent. Watch any of those early Technicolor films where the lights were brutal, and notice how intense and focused those eyes look with those tight pupils. So that's where a powerful key light really comes into its own. And while we're talking eyes, never let the catch light obscure the pupil. If the audience can't see the pupil, they can't read the eyes. Now we come to the background. This is where you can really make it your own to tell a story, to set a mood, or even make the background disappear. And can really light it in two ways, either directing light from outside of the frame or using practical lights that exist within the scene but don't illuminate the whole scene. And if any of those lights are overexposed in your image, use a lower wattage bulb. So our goal with the background is really just to create some level of interest, but without drawing too much attention. And it's really only limited by your imagination, whatever lights you have on hand, and maybe the style of the scene. Here, for instance, I'm creating pools of light with 2-watt LEDs, LED strips around the sound panels, then 2 downlights with coloured gels. And on this channel, I use a lot of coloured lights because it's a channel about theatre. But that might not be you. Maybe all you need is a lamp with a shade, or a desk lamp shining up the wall, or anything else you can imagine. Think of this setup as a starting point you can adapt to your own preferences. And just know that the first time you set up lights, it's going to do your head in. Just accept it. But once you know what you're looking for, it does get easier. So write everything down, equipment, settings, floor plan, and work it all out well ahead of any audition so you're not stressing yourself while you're trying to perform. If you've never been on a film set, you have no idea how cluttered they can be. So if you feel like you're being crowded by equipment, remember the audience only sees whatever's in frame. You know, here, for instance, I have a light, which you probably can't see, a mic, notes, reflector. Once I frame it right, you don't see any of that. Now, this video covers a lot of ground, so use the chapters if you need to find anything. If there's anything I've missed, if you want more of a buying guide, if you want more inspiration for lighting looks, leave me a comment and I'll follow it up. But for now, thanks for sticking to the end. I do appreciate it and I love you. Now get out there light up the world, be brilliant.